Now I'd like to introduce the third of our speakers in this segment. Professor Jane Stout is Professor of Botany in Trinity College and a founding member and chair of the Irish Forum on Natural Capital, our partners in this conference today. She's a long-time advocate for pollinators, for bees in particular, and she's co-author of the Irish Pollinator Plan, which is seen as a model in Europe and globally indeed. So it's a pleasure to ask Jane to come to speak to us. Jane.
Just wondering where my slides are. That's okay, we can do it without slides. No. Okay, I'll start without the slides. As an ecologist, I study and try to understand the complexity of nature, the interactions in ecosystems that keep the circle of life going. Put simply, I study nature's economy. This means that I study how ecosystems work, the behavior and interactions of ecological components, and the production, distribution, and consumption of nature's goods and services. And these are all the same principles that economists study. So ecology and economics aren't so far apart. And this morning, I'll argue that they need to work together. The other thing that we understand as ecologists is how diversity makes systems resilient to perturbation and change, the importance of biodiversity in these systems. And nature's economy, our ecosystems, underpin everything. Nature is our life support system. We depend on nature for survival. It gives us sustenance, food and water, protection, shelter, clothing, fibres, fuel. It gives us protection from the elements, protection from natural hazards, clean air, the list goes on. And for nature to provide us with these daily necessities, we need healthy soils, we need pollinators, natural enemies to regulate pest populations, we need wetlands to clean and process water. We need biodiversity. And as well as all of these things that we absolutely need for our survival, our well-being is also improved by nature. Medicines, education, pleasing landscapes for recreation, for our mental and physical well-being. And as climates change, nature gives us the ability to adapt and provides a mechanism to mitigate rising temperatures and extreme weather events. Nobody here will argue with this. Most of us in this room know the value of nature. It's probably why we are here. But we're in the minority. Many see nature as a luxury that we can't afford. As someone emailed us the other day, no one gives a damn about the environment when we're enduring another round of austerity. So how do we bring the fundamental importance of nature's economy into the human economy? And how do we reverse the economic system failure where our economic system continues to fail to reflect the importance of nature in decisions that affect it? This long-term failure to incorporate nature into our decision-making leads to overexploitation and underinvestment in nature. And this has driven its destruction. Loss of habitats, loss of species, plummeting populations of mammals, of birds, of fish, of insects. A loss for both nature and people. So how do we address this crisis of nature? How do we get it into our everyday decision-making? We need a new economy. One at which nature is at the heart. And one approach is to change the way we think about nature in our decision-making process. Instead of thinking of nature as a problem, an externality, an infinite resource to be exploited, we need to recognize it as the fundamental stock underpinning every transaction and every decision we make. If we think of nature as an asset, a stock of natural capital from which flow goods and services that have benefits and values to business and society that underpin our economy, we can in turn, at governmental level, start to consider our impacts and dependencies on nature, recognize its value in decision making, and work to protect these assets. This could deliver huge benefits to nature and people. And protection of the stock of natural capital, which includes the living and non-living components of ecosystems, including soils, land, water, biodiversity, and the ecological processes that underpin healthy functioning ecosystems. If we protect this stock, it ensures the flow of ecosystem services, the outputs that have benefit and value, the clean water, the air we breathe, the soils in which we grow our crops, the natural habitats that buffer our coastlines from storms, the landscapes in which we find a sense of peace and beauty. So if we conserve the stock, we preserve the flow of these services. And the natural capital approach is about valuing these things that nature provides. It is not about putting a price tag on nature. Can anyone say that this dolphin is worth X many euros? What aspect of the dolphin is worth that? Is it one dolphin, population of dolphins, the entire species? A euro value for a dolphin would be so contested that no one would take it seriously. It doesn't make sense. It would never be reliable enough to use in decision making. But what we can value are the benefits to the local economy of people coming to see the dolphin, the boat trips they take, the cameras they buy, the coffee, the tea, the biscuits from the local shop. These are quantifiable benefits that flow from this biodiversity asset. Without the dolphins, none of these other economic benefits occur. This can allow us to value an aspect of the dolphin to people in a very narrow way. By no means is it the full value of the dolphin, but it gives some insight into the value to people. And there have been challenges in integrating biodiversity into economic decision making. We can't measure all of nature's values on the same scale or even in the same units. And economic valuation will only be a partial reflection of nature's value. It can't reflect the intrinsic value of nature, the value of wonder in nature for its own sake and for future generations, the value of seeing a dolphin swim alongside a boat for the first time, marveling at its ability to go so fast, to jump so high out of the water, to communicate in a language that's not understandable to us. And it's hard to include the ecological role of the dolphin in the food web that it's part of, its role as a predator and a regulator of prey populations, its role as a link in the natural marine cycle. But by recognizing that biodiversity is fundamental to the flow of services, and by valuing those services, we can justify the conservation of biodiversity of our natural assets. So the critical point is that the natural capital approach is a stock-based approach. If applied well, the values associated with the stock, the biodiversity assets, the intrinsic values of nature, the societal values, can be combined with other economic values of benefits that flow from this stock. So for example, bees, and many people know that I love these amazing little creatures. The value of bees for crop production, and new figures from our research show how significantly these contribute to the Irish economy, these crop production values don't reflect the full value of bees, or of the wild plants and the habitats that support the bees outside of the crop flowering period, or the value of bees in creating aesthetically pleasing landscapes, or as an education tool. But the crop pollination value can be combined with these other less tangible values to demonstrate the value of bees and to justify investment in their conservation. We found in a recent survey that 90% of respondents, representative of the adult population in Ireland, want to conserve bees. They want to know that they still exist, even if they're not making any direct use of them. There's no financial value associated with this, but by wanting to conserve bees, people are showing that they value them. And we need to make all these aspects of biodiversity visible. If not made visible, they could be ignored. And because biodiversity underpins everything, our survival, our well-being, our economies, there is an opportunity to reflect this in as many ways as possible, including in natural capital accounts, to bring biodiversity and nature into decision-making that affects the environment, which is all decision-making. Biodiversity is worthy of and needs investment. We need investment to deliver the actions of the National Biodiversity Action Plan. We need investment to support initiatives that already have wide reach, like the All-Ireland Pollinator Plan, but which could do so much more if properly resourced. We need investment to support just transitions, to make the radical changes necessary across farmland, in our energy systems, in our accounting and financial systems, so that livelihoods and communities are not damaged during this transition. We can demonstrate that biodiversity is important, that it has a value. The next step is to invest in nature properly. And over the next 2 days, we will be hearing about projects that are bringing nature into the economy, building communities, bringing people together for positive change. I'm optimistic that we can find and implement solutions and support the solutions that already exist. It's about working together and taking action to recognise the full value of nature. But this is urgent. We need to work with nature rather than against it, and we need to invest wisely in nature for all of our futures. Thank you.